Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A for Courtroom 3H. I would just like to reintroduce our guest, Director Antonio Méndez Esparza, Producer Ana Castañosa, and it's such a privilege to have here with us today Judge Judge Sjostrom. Thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with me about this film.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's such a tremendous relief to see in this film that we have people in these courtrooms making these incredibly difficult decisions, such as yourself, Judge Sjostrom, the lawyers and the caseworkers who truly care, who work each day kind of unpacking this trauma and engaging professionally and compassionately to work towards this mandate of putting the family back together as quickly and as safely as possible, which, you know, sounds so simple, but as your film, Antonio, shows, it's sometimes impossibly complicated. So I want to start this conversation with the quote that you started the film with, the James Baldwin quote. If one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one goes to the unprotected and listens to their testimony. This is a fascinating premise to introduce an observational documentary. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but with this quote, it really feels like you're kind of inviting interpretation from the outset for audiences to bring their own judgments on the families and on the system itself. And you've incorporated nonfiction elements in your past films, and you mentioned in the introduction that there are similarities with your previous film, Life and Nothing More. But this is your first purely nonfiction film. So I want to just start by asking what brought you to this particular subject and how you decided to take this approach.
You know, this is a long answer in a way. So I've always been afraid of documentaries very much. You know, I was always afraid. I was very comfortable in a sort of fiction. You know, in a fiction that is, let's say, fake. No, well, like fiction. No. So I was happy to blend this line, but always, you know, in a way, the characters of the film were always characters. They were never themselves. No. And I was always a bit afraid of crossing that line, you know, of filming, let's say in my first film in Aquilla, which was, I think, closer to the real life of the characters, because it was, the character had a similar life. The wife, his wife was in the film, but they were very confident saying, no, this is not our life. You know, we are characters in this movie. So I was very resistant, but I also, I think, in the process of making my previous two films, I saw a bit the limits of this perspective in terms of trying to capture reality. Sometimes, in a way, it was a bit narrow, even though you try to make films that were very broad. Of course, in the end, it's a story about individuals, and in a way, it becomes, you know, it's like a tight dress, you know, or a tight shirt. No, it's concise in a way. So I did think that I had missed some things in both of my films, and I tried to capture, in a broader sense, a finding that happened while making Life and Nothing More, which is the court system. You know. Then, of course, I was making investigation in juvenile delinquency, juvenile courts. But then I was exposed to dependency court, which is even younger kids often, and then with that the issues of the family, and you know, I wanted to look at the proceedings of this court and try to understand part of the society. You know, that was really very much what pushed me to try and make this film in a way.
And this is a kind of anonymous courtroom, but there is a specificity to it as well. It's Courtroom 3H in Leon County, Florida. The presiding judge is Judge Sjostrom. And as we know, each state handles things differently. I was wondering if you could tell us why you selected the specific location and whether there's anything about this process that's specific to Florida that we might not know.
You know, I often, it's interesting, even though things I've done, they can seem a bit, let's say, random, but they're always a response to my living, you know, to my life journey in a way, you know. So I live here, so the only, if I want to make a movie in a court, it has to be in Tallahassee, you know. It couldn't be in Gainesville or in Franklin. Well, it could be maybe Franklin, but, you know, not in Destin. I mean, I need a place that somehow resonates with me. You know, when I made the movie in Mexico, I was there for nearly 8 months, 9 months, no, so I stayed there quite a bit, which is not the same as living. So for me, that was a very simple, you know, a simple answer. I could only make a movie where I live. Then, of course, I learned about dependency, you know, and how in Florida there is a ECC, which is Early Childhood Court, and how I believe that now the belief, the tendency is to believe that kids are better with their parents instead of in foster care environments. No, so I start, I guess, to discover the system and how the specifics of the place where I live. No, and that's what I try to portray. No, the specificity of those, I guess, situations. In a way, I have no other chance. You know, that's what I can do. You know, I can make films where I live.
He only knows one judge.
Well, I know two. I know two.
That's right. Me and Dodson.
Judge Sjostrom, did you have anything to add about kind of the specificities of this being in Florida? Is there anything that you know about the kind of different way that these cases are handled in other states?
Sure, there's a basic constitutional framework that applies in all child welfare cases, but Florida does some really unique things and has some really unique legal things that affects the way that courtroom operates. One is just a really explicit law that says the court's first priority is to put a family back together as quickly as you safely can. And that is a very different kind of courtroom than most people are used to. The judge in Florida has no power to punish anybody in dependency court. Your job is to help people. And we get no training on that in law school. We start to get some training on that, judge training on that. It was a very different thing. It's a very different thing than what we're used to doing. And it took me probably 10 years to get a level of comfort with doing what I'm doing. We've got some new things in Florida: baby court, early childhood court, where we take a team approach, try to really give those parents and families as much support as you can possibly give them to try and help them get through that process. It's really a hopeful model. The idea is that people grow and change, and we meet people on the worst day of their lives when the government is taking their children away from them, and try and overcome all of the emotions that you can imagine that a parent has on that day, or the shelter day we call it, and start them on the right path. And if we can't get the family back together, then we start heading in the direction of adoption. So it's a very different way. It's a very different way of doing things. Antonio came to me after he finished Life and Nothing More, and, you know, can I just sit in your courtroom? I said, well, of course, it's an open public courtroom. And he sat in the courtroom for, I don't know how long, a long time, and just kind of watch what happened. And then he said, he had one sentence that he said to me: "It's very dramatic." And you know, that of course means nothing to me, but it meant a lot to him. And I was pleased that he would be interested, because it's not my courtroom. It's your courtroom. Justice is being done, or attempted to be done, in every courtroom in this country. And part of the public's responsibility is to hold the courts accountable, to hold me accountable. And I knew that, or I had confidence that Antonio Méndez Esparza would make an honest portrayal of what goes on in court, and that would be part of the accountability that people who have the privilege to serve should expect. So anyway, I don't know exactly how it's done in other states, but it's the same ideas. The same ideas apply.
And you mentioned that this is a public courtroom, but the access is still very surprising that you're allowed to kind of bring a camera crew into here and film these kind of what feel like very private, kind of intimate moments. So this is a question, and I'd love to bring Anna in here as well, as how you began to kind of negotiate this access.
Yeah, it was for us as producers, it was also a concern. But it's true that at the very beginning, when Antonio told us about how he had met the Judge Sjostrom and how he had started to go to the court, and then he told us, I have the permit from the judge to bring the crew there. We were just, okay, perfect. This is the most important thing. I mean, if we have his permit, we are fine. But it's true that when we started watching the materials, we started to be a bit like, are we sure? I mean, we know, we discussed a lot during the edition about how to make the film the story the most respectful possible with everyone appearing in the film. But even like that, we were feeling like, how do we do this? So when we had the almost a final cut, we showed the film to the judge and to his team also in the court. And this was essential because this was the way to bring everyone on board to decide if we were all showing what we thought, what Antonio had perceived during the 6 weeks he was every day filming there. So by the end of the process, we got also a report from a lawyer who explained why, besides the most important, that was the permit from the judge for us to be there and film, that once it had been filmed, once it had been edited, then we had made what we had said we were gonna do. So it was a whole process from trusting us at the beginning and at the very end showing what we had done and then get the final permits to do so. Obviously, we had many discussions about this because as producers and not working working because of the films in legal terms, but we don't know any more about law than what we need to know to make films. We had a lot of discussions about this, but finally it was a really, I think it was a very interesting process. Antonio, I think you will agree that when you finally could show the film and the discussions that the judge had also with the team at the court, I think we got, I mean, everything we needed to remain calm in this sense. Because it's true, it's a very delicate topic. It's very delicate what you see in the images in all the cases. So yes, the legal and the access, the legal affairs and the access was for us essential. And fortunately, everything went well.
Yeah, you can see that there really is a lot of kind of care and consideration taken into it, especially because there are kind of differences in the way that you present the kind of different cases. Some of the faces are blurred, some of them are not. Some people are on camera, some people are completely off screen. So was each decision at your discretion? Were there any conversations had with the subjects themselves?
We wanted to be very, how do you say, extremely neutral, we really embraced the idea, I think Judge Sjostrom did mention, of transparency, and for transparency to exist, I'm not sure you can take sides. Now, of course, this can be an issue, right? But you have to be neutral, you have to remain neutral. So we were extremely, how to say, detached in a way, not that we were not moved, but we had to. So, and we just, it is true. I think the movie doesn't give you the whole context, I think all those people in the court, they know much more than you do, right? Than the audience, that I do. But I didn't want to know, I wanted just to look and learn and see what that means, So, and then the truth is, there were two parts of the film. I think the first part is very much protected by the right to inform. Anyone could sit. It was less a conversation, of course. Then we protected the minors. Courts are public, and the interesting discussion, is if court is not public, can it be transparent, right? So but having said it, the second part, that of being of trials, that was that I think don't know if I can, we had anyway, there was a court order to allow that. So the judge was very gracious, or there was I guess a judgment about how could we release the film, and the way you see it is I guess the agreement or the decision that was made, in terms of blurring the faces. What we did know, and we were, in this sense, we were very fortunate in a way, because we did know that trials could not be recorded. So that's why you see that in trials we don't show the people, because we knew, I thought, okay, we can shoot the state of not the state, but the public officials and this, but not the person who can lose, no. So that we knew. But of course there is a case where you see the man, no, is the first one. But very fortunately for him, of course, that case went his way, and then he agreed to be part of the film. But it was, so in that sense, yes, it was a bit of it was a huge gamble on our part, and I think also on the judge, not gamble, but of him allowing us to film those trials, and then us going back and see if we could shoot them. So there was a lot of uncertainty, of how we could use it or not. And I think at the core of your question, maybe it's this kind of the moral position of the filmmaker shooting these things, or these things, these events. And that's a really tough question. And it goes back to the beginning, of documentary, and what are you exposing? And that's there, I think people can make choices about what they think. It's there, I think. But I think a film in a way has to expose something sometimes maybe difficult for the filmmaker. So yeah, I hope this is an answer.
Yeah, and you mentioned something actually that I wanted to touch on, that we kind of arrive in this courtroom knowing nothing. What we see about these families are these kind of like bursts of, as Judge Sjostrom said, the worst day of their lives, this incredibly dramatic moment. And I could go on and on with questions about this process. But when these families arrive in your courtroom, they've already experienced a tremendous amount of trauma, sometimes for generations on end, it seems. And this includes the parents, yet we're only seeing them for these very brief moments. I'm wondering, is that your experience as well? Or do you have relationships with these families? Do you see them for hearings on end, or do the hearings turn into trials? How does this kind of work?
So the way it's kind of a two-track process. Most dependency cases, like most court cases in general, are resolved by agreement. The difference so at the beginning of the case, we have very few trials. Most cases are by agreement. But the difference in dependency is once the person comes to court, the Department of Children and Families files a petition against them, and we have a trial, and if the judge decides that dependency has been proved, or more likely the parents consent, which is like entering a plea of guilty in a criminal case, the parents consent, you don't sentence them. You really sentence the Department of Children and Families to help, make resources available, give the family what they need to be have a fair chance to be put together, to be reunified. And so, yeah, then throughout that process, it's the judge's job to manage really the services and the attempt to reunify. And then in early childhood court, a very resource intensive court, I'll see those families every single month. And the whole team is meeting before court every single month to work through barriers and problems that the family has had. Things as mundane as, transportation, an endless problem. I can't get to my appointments because I don't have a driver's license or a car or any money or a home. Try and get them set up with bus passes or something else so that they can have a decent chance. Put them in a situation, housing, constantly trying to help people with housing so that they can have a place to live and have a home base and get started on their services and get work and employment and have a chance to reunify. So lots of these families, oh yeah, we get to know each other real well. They see me at my worst too, you know. So it's not like other courts where, you know, you see them once or twice, have a trial, sentence them, and move on to the next one. It's much more of a relationship, a two-way relationship, and you know, you're trying to establish that relationship from the very first time you see them, which is within 24 hours of their child being removed against their will. So yeah, it's different than other kinds of court, and I've done everything you can do as a trial judge in Florida, and this is very different.
I want to hear a little bit about the process of collecting and editing all of this material. The text at the beginning tells us that more than 300 hearings were filmed. Over the course of how long was that, and how did it come together as a film for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, we filmed for 2 months. I think we started maybe early November. I think we filmed, you know, in total, of course, court is open every day, but it's not like every day they have long days. So, you know, it depends of every day. So basically, we had a crew that was always ready to film. Every day we'll show up for just in case there is a shelter hearing. Shelter hearings are those, as they say, when a family gets the children removed. And so there is a hearing that morning at 8:30. This is, of course, not every day. Fortunately, there is a hearing, but I guess we were always there just in case, no? And then we had the docket, and we will just film everything we could, no? That always on the court, no? We never wanted to follow the teams, the families, always. In terms of logistically, it was very easy, no? Because we just left the cameras. It was very simple. And then it is true that we had a big challenge into how to give context to this film, and I think that's where you know, James Baldwin, who is a writer I love, and I think that quote very much helped. You know, it's a bit like sometimes the title of a film helps you a lot. You know, I think even the title of which I don't know what was. I think the title was Second Judicial Court at some point, but you know, these things are kind of, for me, are like ways to look at things, and I think that title very much center, you know, the idea behind, because it is true. The movie was hard when we were cutting, you know, it seemed random often, you know, in early cuts, they just seemed random. Yeah, emotional, but there was no order, no organization. Even ourselves, we were trying to get into very grainy detail of the judicial process in terms of arraignment, hearing, a shelter, you know, so we were very, you know, we're trying to find a structure with chapters that would work. So I thought those words for me were very inspiring, and they guided me through. And we took a long time to edit. I think we took, well, I mean, like 5 months, I think. I mean, not long, but for me, quite long. And we did know that the only way to make the movie was really with this kind of a structure, no, of cutting from. So I knew or we knew we didn't want to follow a particular family. So that was very clear. So we had a kind of clean container in a way, but then we didn't know what was going to be the beginning or the end, no? And, you know, sometimes these things happen, like the end of the film is actually, I think, the day before we finished shooting, you know, that case happened. And when it happened, we knew that would be the end. So yes, sometimes, you know, you're fortunate, you know.
The light moments that you've included are so wonderful as well. You know, the families being reunified and the happy adoptions that came out of it. It's really, you know, it's such a heavy film, but it's nice to be reminded that this mandate does sometimes work. So I want to really thank all of you for being here. Thank you, Judge Sjostrom, for everything you do for these families. And thank you to Antonio and Ana for this wonderful film. We're so honored to be screening this as a part of AFI Docs. Thank you to everyone in the audience for being here today. Please visit our website at docs.afi.com for more opportunities to interact with these films, audiences, and filmmakers, and of course, to watch more films. Courtroom 3H is available to screen throughout the remainder of the festival, and we would love to hear from you on social media at #AFI Docs. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.